Hello, good morning, everybody. Welcome to this webinar on PeopleSoft Test Framework-based Test Automation. I'm your host, Arvind Rajan from Astute Business Solutions. We are going to get this going in a minute or so, just giving everybody who is registered to log in, get on to both the online web conference and the audio bridge. We got a couple of emails from people saying they had some trouble logging in. So just wanted to make sure that they had time to join before we got this started. We have over 150 people registered, so hopefully everybody's able to get on, and then we'll start the presentation and demo very soon. So while we're waiting for others to join, a couple of quick logistical pointers for today's session. So the webinar platform is join.me, and I'm your primary presenter today. I'll be bringing in one or two additional presenters from my team at various stages during the presentation today to specifically demonstrate PTF and fast test. Please reserve all of your questions on the webinar topic to the end of the presentation. We have set aside a good amount of time for Q&A. And during that time, if you could send your questions addressed to me. So you would use the chat feature in Join Me to find my name, Arvind Rajan, at the top, and you would address your questions to me. If you'd like to post it to the group as a whole, you're welcome to do that as well. That way, all of us get to see the questions. Otherwise, you can post it to me, and I'll read those off one by one, and we'll answer those. Usually, we are able to get to all of the questions during the webinar. We've done this a few times, and we're able to do that. In the event that we are not able to get to all of your questions, we will certainly take down your questions, document our responses, and send it back in a written FAQ to you and all of the participants on today's webinar. So with that said, we'll get started. One or two more people coming in. Hopefully, all of you are able to see my presentation. We'll just go ahead and unlock so that, okay, there we go. Okay, we're all set. So as I mentioned earlier, our topic is test automation with PeopleSoft Test Framework. Over the last 2 years that we've been implementing PeopleSoft Test Framework-based test automation and providing customers our bolt-on solutions, which we call fast test, to enhance and accelerate test automation for PTF, we've seen the interest level in PTF go up significantly. A couple of years ago when we were talking about PTF, a lot of customers were just not aware of this tool even being available to them. And then as they all prepared to move to 9.2 and went through their upgrades and subsequently started looking at selective adoption and planning their PUM image updates and so on, they realized that they could not do that effectively without the use of a test automation solution. And PeopleSoft Test Framework, because it's included in your PeopleTools license, provides a good, compelling solution for you to take a look at. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So webinar instructions, I went over this, but again, the link is there. All of you should have an email with the link for those of you registered. And then once you join.me online, you should have the call-in instructions there. Please put all of your phones on mute during the presentation and demo, and use the chat feature to send questions to me or send it to all of the audience members. A safe harbor statement, because you're going to see, in addition to PTF, a demonstration of our proprietary bolt-on solution, which we call fast test. So some of the features that you see here may be from our latest release, and so that's why we have a safe harbor statement intended to protect what we say and software that we're demonstrating to you today. So the agenda for today's meeting is this. So we're going to talk about testing challenges, because I think the crux of any test automation solution has to depend on solving a problem. You cannot do automation because it's cool or because you just have the money to spend. It has to be based on a real business problem that you're trying to solve. So we want to talk about challenges and then how test automation can help you overcome those challenges and be better at using PeopleSoft, maintaining PeopleSoft. Then we'll make the case for PeopleSoft Test Framework. Why should you use PTF over other tools? There are several tools in the market. There are large enterprise applications, big players like HP and IBM in the game. There's some mid-tier players, and then there's open source as well. So, but why should you consider PTF? And then if you've considered PTF, how can you use PTF to enhance, accelerate, and manage your automated test libraries? Then we'll go to a demo. You'll get a good 20 to 30 minutes of live demo on our PeopleSoft instance with PTF and FastTest. And then there'll be subsequent Q&A. All said and done, rest assured that the majority of today's presentation and demonstration will be focused on PTF and test automation, and we'll make sure there's plenty of time to cover all of your questions. Just a quick thing about Astute Business Solutions. So we are a Oracle partner founded by ex-PeopleSoft employees. They've been in business for over a decade now, and we've done several 9.2 upgrades. We've implemented on-prem and cloud solutions, and test automation has taken off in a big way in the last year and a half to 2 years. And we've led the way with test automation mainly because of the investments we've made in PTF, and I'll talk a little bit about that throughout the presentation, and the bolt-on tool that we've built to differentiate and help customers adopt PTF. So you'll see a lot of details on that. But just a little bit about recent successes that Astute has had on test automation with PTF. So the first one that has made a big change in the way customers view PTF is FastTest. So as you'll see in today's demo, PTF is a great tool because it's integrated and it's available with your PeopleTools software. But it has some challenges, some limitations, and we've largely overcome all of those using FastTest. So that's been a huge success for us. And then keeping up with version 9.2, using PTF for 9.2 is just the initial part of your automation journey. From there on, with every subsequent PUM update, PeopleTools upgrade, or regulatory tax update, you need to find a way to maintain and update your test libraries. And that's where we have provided a value-added service to our customers by giving them pre-built libraries for each PUM release, each tax update, and so on. And then the automation that we have explored and created with PTF, using PTF tools and then building additional tools on top of that as part of our FastTest solution, including things like one-click execution, which we'll talk about a little later. Some of our recent successes, so we've done over 25 implementations overall for test automation. And then within that, a lot of success recently in healthcare, financial services, education, government, professional services, just to name a few industries. By no means is this restricted by industry, but these are some of the industries that we've had experience in implementing this. And then obviously, PeopleSoft has also had a lot of strength in these industries over the years. So let's jump right into it. Let's talk about testing challenges. Now, every time we do a webinar and every time we go to a conference and we meet customers, we always survey them by asking them to fill out a form or asking them some questions about the state of their testing today, whether they're on 9.2 or not yet on 9.2. And the most common response we get is most testing in customer applications today for PeopleSoft is manual. It's not a lack of availability of automation tools. Neither is it always a lack of budget or time. It's just that testing has always been on the sidelines and it has been an afterthought in many cases. And customers have just managed to get by with manual testing. And with that manual testing, there are significant challenges that are now coming to the forefront because of 9.2. Mainly because of the upgrade and the fast pace of change that you're getting with PUM updates. It's very resource intensive. It's very costly as a result, whether you're using in-house employees or external consultants or managed services, there is a high cost associated with that. A lot of the manual testing resides in Excel. So Excel rules. Excel is king. Everything is maintained in Excel, which means it has to be typed in manually by somebody or a group of people. It has to be updated every time you do an enhancement or an upgrade or apply a change. And oftentimes, that's where things start failing because you are not able to keep up with maintenance of these test scripts with your update or enhancement projects. Then comes the challenge of creating test data, mining for test data, and maintaining test data for one or more projects, and within projects, one or more cycles of testing. And again, a lot of manual work here, a lot of data stored in Excel, and a lot of data that can easily get stale or obsolete between projects or sometimes even between test cycles. Talking about test management, there is the aspect of executing and recording tests and preparing tests. That's what the actual hands-on testers do, the business users do during UAT and so on. But then there's a project management aspect of it and the overall tracking and management of testing scope, test plans, test resources, defects, test metrics, and so on. From having daily meetings to filling out Excel-based issue logs or SharePoint issue logs and all that, and trading hundreds of emails during test cycles, it's just an extremely laborious process for all of our customers. And after all this is done, you're still left with a set of test scripts that are not very reusable because they're manual. They're not easy to maintain, again, because they're manual and somebody has to know what to do. And because there still is a large amount of tribal knowledge or undocumented knowledge within most organizations when we talk to them, where the testing is highly dependent on the availability of a certain resource and that skill set. So common challenges that we hope to provide solutions for by demonstrating something to you today. Now let's also look at what expectations there are at various levels in the organization and the impact of testing to those roles. So starting with management or business stakeholders, their expectation is that we should be able to stay current as far as possible with the latest releases that Oracle's providing for PeopleSoft. That's what the company pays huge amounts of maintenance fees to Oracle every year for, right? So you pay a certain percentage of your license fee as annual maintenance. For that, Oracle gives you software updates. But if you're not consuming those and using them to get better or improve your application performance or provide more features to your business, then business feels like they're not getting enough value for their investment. So they want to stay current, but at the same time, they want minimal disruption to the business. If you're a business user, your expectation is that I'm being told by my IT team or my consulting team that we should upgrade to the latest release. Fine, we'll support that. But at the same time, my expectation as a business user is I'll give you a system, it's working today. When I get it back from you, I expect it to work the same way. It can have enhancements, it can be better, but at a minimum, whatever I had working today should continue to work the same way so that my business functions are not disrupted. And the downside of not having that expectation met is, you could not be able to pay your vendors on time, payroll runs could be impacted, employee onboarding services could have a problem, benefits and things like that could be impacted. So really org-wide impacts from a business user standpoint. Now, if you're an analyst, you are in between, you're straddling the gap between business users and the IT team, and that's a very vital function. You are in charge of ensuring that whatever passes through as a change from development or test into production is thoroughly tested and vetted before it goes live. And you are in fact, in many ways responsible for making sure that there's minimal disruption, no delays, less rework, and so on. So that expectation has to be met. From a developer standpoint, the expectation is that whatever you touch, you unit test it, and you make sure that you also regression test it so that you make a change in one area, you're testing other areas regressively to make sure nothing else is broken because of that one change. And if you don't do that, the impact is you're redoing a lot of things, you're facing defects that you have to rewrite code for, and all of that can be eliminated if you test it properly and design it to spec, right? And then the administrator of your PeopleSoft systems, whether it's a individual or a group of individuals or a shared services team, at the end of the day, they want a system that is streamlined in terms of maintenance and management. And they want to be able to make sure that information is carried forward from one environment to the other, but it is tested so that there's less downtime. That's what they're responsible for system availability and downtime. So they want a solution that is always tested and of high quality. So that's the impact. Now, you're making the case for test automation, so you go forward and you look at why test automation, especially in the context of version 9.2. Now, many of you have told us you are on 9.2. Oracle's estimate is about 50% of customers are on 9.2 or upgrading to 9.2 at the moment, and the others are expected to catch up sometime in the next year or two or some time frame like that, because 9.1 is running out of support very soon. So when you start looking at 9.2, or if you're already on 9.2, you know that 9.2 is a very different world as far as PeopleSoft is concerned and as far as maintenance is concerned. You are not going to be doing things like you did in the pre-9.2 world, where you would just apply patches and fixes when you wanted to, or you would choose not to apply patches, fixes, bundles, maintenance packs altogether and just continue to build customized solutions. Now what's happening is that every 8 weeks or so, Oracle's going to release a PUM image for PeopleSoft 9.2, and that image is going to contain not just patches and fixes, but also several enhancements and several new features. So now your business is going to say, listen, we have to have a strategy to keep current because we want some of these newer features that Oracle's delivering, and that's part of PUM. So customers that we're talking to have a selective adoption strategy defined. Some of you are still defining it. Some of you have defined it. Some of you are already implementing it, where you may decide to do a full PUM update once a year. Maybe you want to do a full update once a year and then a catch-up mid-year. Whatever your cadence is or your frequency of updates is, you will find that you will be testing more often and you'll be testing more. Why? Because testing often is because of the multiple times you will apply PUM images. Tools is also going to go to that PUM model starting with 8.5.6. That's what Oracle's indicated, which means that in addition to application features and payroll tax updates and regulatory updates and new features, tools is also going to be encapsulated into PUM. So now you're going to frequently test people tools as well. Then you have business-driven change. The business is excited about 9.2 because not just because the look and feel has changed and that some screens are slick now, but because there's genuinely new functionality that can change the business. It can bring more efficiencies in. It can eliminate customizations in some places and so on. So the business is looking ahead at some of these newer features. They're talking to Oracle. They're giving feedback as part of the CAB meetings and such, and seeing those things come back into the application. They are reaching out to IT and saying, hey, I'm giving you a heads up. 3 months later, Oracle's going to release this image and it's going to have these features. We want to start looking at this in advance and planning for that. Because you're going to be doing more than one update possibly in a year, depending on what your selective adoption strategy is, you also want a way to be able to turn this around fairly quickly. You don't want these individual projects to be like major upgrades where it takes 6 months or 8 months to deploy it. You really want to be thinking in terms of days and weeks instead of months. So that makes another case for automated testing. And then higher quality. Overall, when you're pushing so many changes into PeopleSoft and adopting new features, you want to make sure that everything is thoroughly tested and it's regression tested, not just unit tested or functionally tested. So that means you have to do more testing, you have to have more regression flows for testing, and you have to have an automated way to look at all of these things as a whole, report on it, manage it, and be able to track it as you move along from one image to the other. So the missing piece in the center of that circle you see, that's PTF in our opinion. We don't think that's the only solution out there for you, but that fits very nicely within PeopleSoft as a block of the puzzle that helps you complete the puzzle. And we've seen that integrate very well into customers' existing processes of maintaining and managing PeopleSoft. So that's the case. Now, why PTF? Again, just a quick recap. You already own PTF. You don't have to pay extra licenses for that or license fees for that. It's part of your PeopleTools license. It's natively integrated with PeopleTools. It uses PeopleTools metadata heavily. So that's a huge advantage as opposed to an external tool that has to learn PeopleSoft or interpret PeopleSoft screens for you. There are many third-party tools that can record and play back like PeopleSoft, but like PTF does. But many of them are screen scrapers. They don't understand metadata in PeopleSoft, and they are not able to keep up with changes in PeopleSoft. So for example, if a screen scraper is using the screen to capture a field on a particular page, next time you make an enhancement and you move that field, that means you incur maintenance on a third-party test automation tool. Whereas with PTF, because it's metadata-driven, it does not care about the placement of the field on a page. It just looks at what the field name is and what the value is. And then there's record and playback, which is expected out of all test automation tools. PeopleSoft has that out of the box. It's easy to maintain because it's the equivalent of maintaining another set of objects within Application Designer now. You don't have to look at maintaining a third-party repository, having specialized skills to implement, maintain, and support those tools. This becomes part of your PeopleSoft maintenance team's efforts and whatever they do to manage PeopleSoft applications. So some benefits of PTF-based automation: one-click execution. So you get the ability to record and play back. So instead of, let's say you have a test with 10 steps in it, rather than executing each of those 10 steps, you can, with a single click, play the entire test. Now, that's the lowest level of automation that you can achieve with PTF, but there's a lot more that you could do. You could actually program this tool to run tens or hundreds of tests for you at the click of a button. And that just needs some advanced knowledge of PTF and some good preparation as a customer on your part to be able to provide the right data, the right design inputs, so that you build it once and then continue to reuse it every time. The responsiveness comes from two things. One is you are going to be able to execute a large number of tests in a very short time frame, as opposed to having an army of testers looking at Excel spreadsheets and divvying up the work and doing those manually. But the tests themselves, because now you're going to have the ability to compress the timeline, not just by running automated tests at the click of a button, but running shell tests and batch tests, if you want to look at batch capability, and we'll talk a little bit about that later on in the demo. You have all of those capabilities, so you can turn around a test cycle in a matter of days instead of weeks, which can then compress your deployment cycle for upgrade or PUM image update and so on. And then the multiple uses. So PTF is not just for one type of project or one type of enhancement. Anything that you do to your PeopleSoft applications can be tested with PTF. You can obviously use it for upgrade and PUM image update and tools upgrade, but you can also use it for negative testing. You can use it for security testing, as many of our customers have done. You can use it for compliance testing. You can use it to check audit logs in PeopleSoft. There's so many things you can do. It incorporates workflow. It incorporates multiple user IDs and execution profiles. So there's nothing in PeopleSoft that you cannot test. One of our most recent implementations has been for an HCM 9.2 upgrade, and the customer is using PTF to also test all of their integration broker-based integrations using PTF. So there's a lot of capability here and easy to use as well. And then the efficiency comes about because once you go through that initial effort of building your test repository, and we'll show you how you can accelerate that using some tools that we've built, but once that is set and once you've used that for a successful test cycle, every subsequent use of that test library just means that you're providing more data values and pressing a few buttons to run all of those tests, as opposed to manually executing all of those tests for every test cycle. In terms of the returns on investment, you should be able to see significant increases in efficiency, decreases in time, and overall savings on resource costs and things like that as you continue to develop this solution in-house and use more of it. So moving on, how do you deploy all this? So you've heard the case for why PTF and how it can solve some of your challenges around testing. You can completely get away from Excel. You can completely get away from having to track test results and logs and issues and report on them manually. We'll show you how to do that. But then once you know all of this, how do you do it? Installing PTF and configuring it is very easy. In fact, it's as easy as just downloading any application from the internet and just running a setup file and installing it. That's it. It shows up as a Windows-based client application on your desktop. And then there are a few extra steps to follow to configure it so that it speaks to or talks to your PeopleSoft application through Integration Broker. Again, very simple. Should not take you more than a few hours at the most if you follow instructions. And this is clearly documented in PeopleBooks. We have some additional documentation that we can provide to make it more efficient. But all said and done, it's a day's worth of work. Once you're done with that, you can now provide the client to your functional analysts or your business users, and you can say, listen, turn on the recorder while you're doing some transactions. Let's record some tests and see what they look like, and let's play them back with a different set of values to see if we can automate testing for those tests that you've just recorded. It can be as simple as that. Now, the complexity may come when you want to build, let's say, hundreds of tests because your PeopleSoft application footprint is, let's say, HCM and financials and a total of maybe 20 modules between the two, right? So that's a large footprint. It'll probably take you weeks with the number of resources to record all the tests or to convert all of your tests, all of your manual Excel-based scripts into automated tests in PTF. So how do you overcome that? You can accelerate that by using a pre-built library that we've provided, and that'll get you within an hour or so, hundreds of pre-built tests for every module that you have, and a template that you can use now to quickly modify or add to or insert or put those into sequences as shell tests, depending on whatever your flows are and what your needs are. Do some compares to identify your customization. So there's ways to accelerate that, and that's what you would do. Once you have that repository built, then what you want to do is look at how you can go from one click per test to one click that gives you many tests, right? So that's the concept of a shell test. And we have some advanced tools for that, which we call a process sequencer, and you'll see that as well. So the ability to be able to put multiple process flow-based tests or end-to-end process tests into a single set so that you can execute that with a single click, that's where you really want to get to, because at the end of the day, you may have 500 or 1,000 or 2,000 tests. I don't know how many you have today. But what you want to get to is maybe a core set of 20, 30, or 50 regression scenarios for your applications that cover all these modules and all of the core tests in these modules. And then you may have variations of each of those regression tests, but those may be variations in data because there may be logical configurations in PeopleSoft that determine which way a transaction is processed or how it is processed, depending on the input values. But that's just test planning and test prep. Once you have this, you get into test maintenance mode. The simplest best practice recommendation that we give to all of our customers is don't think of PTF as a separate solution. It should be an integral part of what you do for PeopleSoft maintenance. It should be fully baked into your ongoing PeopleSoft application development methodology. You develop an enhancement, you develop a test, or you modify a test, you package it with that, you test it with that. That way you don't get behind on the curve. You're not always playing catch up if you update your test library as and when you make changes. Now, easier said than done. I know many of you must be thinking that, yeah, this guy's saying just do it as part of your maintenance and as part of your software development. But then that's always the issue there, isn't it? Because we talk to customers who have tools like UPK, for example, spent a lot of time and money documenting all of their processes in detail, integrated it with PeopleBooks, and they went live with it. A year later, that UPK is useless because they have not bothered to update, or they have not had the resources or the ability to update that in a timely manner. So if you want PTF to continue to pay dividends, you have to find a way to integrate that into your ongoing maintenance and software development lifecycle. So a little bit about how fast test comes in and adds value. So you have the core, you have PeopleSoft Test Framework, which gives you record and playback capability. You can edit tests and so on. But then we come in and add things that are missing in PTF for test automation. So dashboards and work centers do two main things. One, the dashboard gives you a snapshot of what's happening with your test environment at any given point in time. Test metrics, defect metrics, and so on. Test results, one-click access to various test reports so that you don't have to go look for information, build your own queries or things like that. The second aspect of it is the ability to consolidate all of the test automation tools that we have built, the ability to manage your test library, to version control it, to be able to edit and sequence tests, build test data, write and execute data mining queries for your tests. All of that is consolidated into a test work center so that you don't have to go through multiple menus. A single screen can accomplish all of your test automation tasks. And then there are some advanced automation tools. We'll talk about that and we'll show you a demo. When we give you a pre-built library, you want to be able to determine how you can take advantage of that, where you can use it, where you have to modify it, so we can do a customization compare for you. You have tools like Defect Manager that allow you to look at PTF test outcomes, extract test logs, identify failed tests, automatically log defects, and then allow you to track it with attachments, with notifications and workflow and all of that good stuff. And then scheduling and batch. So if you want to look at a solution where, in addition to PTF, you want to be able to, on a weeknight or a weekend, schedule a number of tests to run in batch mode, so that you come back on the following day or following weekday and start reviewing test results, then you can do that with these advanced automation tools that we call FastTest. So a little bit about FastTest. So FastTest is a lot more than PTF. PTF is the underlying engine that allows you to do record and playback, but FastTest gives you pre-built libraries which you will not have with PTF. So PTF is a test utility, does not have any pre-built tests. FastTest gives you pre-built tests for every application and every module within that application for 9.1 and 9.2. The minimum requirement is that you have to be on PeopleTools 8.5.2. Although PTF is available in 8.5.1, we don't recommend using it until you're at 8.5.2 or higher. If you want to look at some of the newer features that we're going to demo today, where you see fluid screens and work centers and dashboards, we recommend that you're at 8.5, you be at 8.5.3 or higher to use that. Maintenance tools, so we spoke about what makes PTF successful. It's not a one-time project. If you want to invest in PTF and make it pay dividends for every subsequent project that you do on 9.2, then you have to have the right set of maintenance and test management tools, which is what FastTest provides. And then for you to have complete visibility and provide your business counterparts complete transparency into defects and how you're resolving them, and have that history in your system within PeopleSoft, you have tools like Defect Manager to use. So FastTest adds a lot of value. It eliminates all of those test management overheads that we spoke about as a testing challenge in the beginning. The pre-built library gives you a huge jump start so that you save time and money up front, not having to develop all of the tests from scratch. Our pre-built library also has several end-to-end process scenarios automated and available as samples for you. So your recruit to hire process, or hire, onboard, and benefits enrollment, that process chain, or your procure to pay process, or order to cash process. We have templates built for all of those end-to-end scenarios so that you don't have to build them from scratch. You can leverage ours and modify them or use them as is if you're vanilla. So that's on FastTest. Moving on, so we're ready for demo now. I'll bring Tanvi in as presenter, and she'll do the demo. She'll walk you through the screens and show you some live examples. And after the demo, we'll come back for a quick recap, and then we'll get into Q&A.
Thank you, Arvind. For the past 20-25 minutes, we've been hearing a lot about automation using PeopleSoft Test Framework and FastTest. So now let's take a look at some of these things in action. Let me start at the very core of this automation solution, which is PeopleSoft Test Framework. I understand a lot of you may have already had an exposure to this tool. You may have worked on it. You may understand the challenges that you've faced till now. For others, this may be the first time you're taking a look at the tool. So let me just give you a brief introduction to PeopleSoft Test Framework. It's a basic client-server setup. Once you have the basic integration broker setup, you need to take the client exe, which is there in your PS Home folder, and install it on your machine. What you're seeing is a sign-on window for PTF, and this PTF client can connect to multiple instances at any point of time. So here I have several instances. I'm going to pick one, which is our FSCM instance, and connect to this instance. What you're seeing here are some folders. Now, as Arvind mentioned, PTF does not come delivered with any pre-built library. So that means the day you decide to get into automation, you will actually have to put in the effort of recording the transactions within every module, within every application of every module of your application, be it HCM, FSCM, Campus Solution, ELM, any of these applications. So what we do is we provide you a pre-built library, And this library aims at touching all the vanilla transactions within every module of your application. So this may be we are talking about hundreds of discrete transactions within each of these modules. So consider the example of purchasing. You have creation of a requisition, creation of a purchase order, you create a receipt, dispatch a purchase order. So there are a lot of transactions within every module, and imagine coming into PTF and recording each of these transactions. So the objective of the fastest library, the pre-built library, is to give you a jump start in terms of these discrete transactions. So that's the very first level of automation, recording these transactions. Moving on to the second level of automation is to then string together these discrete transactions into what you call in PTF as shell tests, or business process scenarios that you usually perform in your organization as part of your regression testing. So you may not just want to create a requisition and then you may want to pass on the data to a PO, dispatch a PO, create a receipt, move on to payables, create a voucher out of it, take it all the way up to payment. So the second level of automation is building such end-to-end scenarios. So let's take a look at one of the examples in purchasing where we have created a simple P2P cycle, and this should demonstrate the ability or capability of PTF and the single-click execution we spoke about. So as you can see, this may get a little technical, but let's try to decrypt this. We have a certain set of tests here in a shell test. A shell test is a grouping of tests. So I have a test for creation of a requisition, PO, dispatching it, receipt, voucher, and then posting the voucher. What I've done is I have built one single test which is going to string all of these tests together, and all of this is then driven through a setup data which I am passing on to my test. So what that means is that my tests are independent of the data. Depending on the setup information that I pass on to the test would be actually performed. So I have a setup data. I then move on to executing a query to fetch a list of all the active projects that I have, so that the requisition that I create is booked against the active project. So it's not hard-coded data, but it is looking into my system, looking for valid data. And one can design several such scenarios where you don't actually hard-code any data into your tests, but what you're doing is looking into your transaction history and looking into your setup data and fetching all relevant input information that then acts as test data for your shell test. So what that also means is if I pick up this test and move it over to another instance which may vary in your setup data, the test need not be modified. It is all dynamic. So let's take a look. When we speak about single-click execution, we're talking about the run button at the very top. Once you click on the run button, it is going to do a series of actions here. I've activated some steps and in the interest of time, not activated a few of them. So it's going to create a requisition and take it all the way up to dispatching a PO. These are the execution options that you're seeing. This is the ability within PTF to choose the login credentials or the URL to which you connect to, which means that I can run the same test with different logins, perform any kind of security testing, or even have a centralized repository of tests, which means that I can run the same test against multiple instances, all from within the same PTF client. So now I've executed the test. If you notice the very top button, the yellow box that you're seeing on top, it will tell you exactly the step that is being conducted right now. So it's logging into the FSCM instance. Since this is on 855, the login screen, the first screen that you're seeing was fluid. Now it's moved on to executing the query, which will fetch a list of all active projects. So this is just an example of how you can fetch dynamic data. In this case, it could be active accounts, active projects, relevant business units, anything. It depends on the flexibility that you want to incorporate within your scenarios. Now it's moved on to the second test where it will go and create a requisition. So just to add to this, you also have the ability to create multiple loop through your query results such that you can create multiple samples of data. So in this case, suppose you want to create multiple requisitions and then use the requisitions for different business units. You have 5 business units within your system. You want to create 5 requisitions for each of those 5 business units. So even that can be done. The capability exists within the tool. So here the requisition 184 was created. And now it will move on to the next test, where the intention is to create a purchase order by copying the requisition. So dynamically the data, the requisition ID 184 would be passed on to your purchase order. So now in this case, the whole objective of showing your scenario is that you're cutting down data dependency. So if you are in, say, AP or AM and you need some sample requisitions or sample vouchers that act as an input to your module, you no longer have to depend on other module owners to supply the information that you need. You have a test for creating a requisition. You know how to change the setup data, and you can use it to just create all kind of data that you want for your testing. So that kind of reduces the turnaround time for any kind of bundle testing or pump testing that you do in the future. So this example gives you, it's showing you how you can run batch processes. So it is going to dispatch the PO. It's picked up the PO ID from the previous test, and it's going to run the process. PTF has the capability to keep polling for the process to complete, so it will keep refreshing the screen till the process goes into success or a warning or an error. So with this example, hopefully you've noted several capabilities of the tool. You can run queries to extract result. You can string together multiple tests to pass on data from one test to the other. You can run processes, wait for the process to get into completion status. And there are a whole lot of things that we can do. You can verify various validation points within your test. That includes, say, the status of the PO or the requisition that you're creating. Once the PO is dispatched, you may want to go back to the PO and create a validation point that the test should pass only if the PO has been dispatched. So several such validations can be incorporated within the test. The test has ended, and as you can see, the status of the test is something that you can see here. Several validation points have been added here. For example, the PO ID has to be approved. And what happens is every time you run the test execution logs are getting generated. So this test was run 26 times. This is the latest execution, and it shows a green flag, which means the test passed. So this was PTF in the crux of PTF and the capability of the tool. So this was PTF that comes delivered with your PeopleSoft license. At this stage, I'd want to now transition over to FastTest, which is a layer over PTF, and the objective of FastTest is to enhance and expand the capability of this tool. So this means in terms of reporting, dashboards, and other automation tools, as we had highlighted in our slides. So I'm logging into our FSCM instance. It's on 855, and we have reports that we have specially built for testing, for reporting on the test metrics or the test execution that happens within PTF. So it's completely integrated with the tool. Every time you run a test, every time you add to the test, the tiles that you're seeing here reflect the exact status. So to give you an example, this shows the process testing. We just executed a process, and this report will give you live metrics of that. So it shows that 11 tests have gone into a pass status. If I drill down further, this was the test I executed, PO requisitions. This was the 26th ID, and if I drill down to the test, what I see is the granular view of all the tests that were executed within that shell test, as well as the execution status of those tests. So all this is live metrics in terms of execution status, and since we have a completely integrated Defect Manager solution, it also gives you all the defects that reside within the system, whom has it been assigned to, and what's the exact status of those defects. So several such parameters, several such reports can be incorporated within your Fluid homepage or tiles. It's completely configurable. It depends on the metrics that you choose to see on the dashboard. From a test management or maintenance point of view, we have several tools that expand or further automate the core capability of PTF. So as you saw within PTF, if you open every test or if you open every log, the view looks a bit cryptic. Now, in such cases, you may want a simplified online view for your business users, and that is one of the value propositions of Fastest. It gives you an online window into each of these tools. Now, these tools can be used to increase test coverage by generating more test cases for each of your existing tests within the repository. You have an online tool to create end-to-end business process sequence. So it's a three-step train stop design that will help you string together multiple tests within your repository and create an end-to-end sequence. You can do data mining with a tool called a Testplosion. And you also have the ability to reorganize the folder structure within PTF. So all such capabilities exist within the automation tool. And suppose you're not on 855, you still haven't explored the Fluid version, we have what we call as the Fluid dashboard, which is for all those who are still on the classic view. The dashboard gives you all the reporting metrics similar reporting metrics that you saw on the Fluid homepage. The test execution report will give you folder-wise. It will tell you how many tests reside within every module, how many were run, how many passed, and what's the overall execution status. And they've been color-coded so that it draws attention to all those areas that need special attention due to several issues. You have pie charts that will tell you the exact status per module. You can filter it. You can drill down further. So several such metrics that are included within the dashboard. The work center that you see on the left-hand side gives you the ability to drill down to each of these tools. We have the test case generator that gives you the ability to create test cases. We have process sequencer. Let's take a look at one of the tools which integrates with our Defect Manager solution. So in a real-world scenario, once you begin your test execution, you are going to track it on the reports. But what if you want to see what failed today? What are the areas that can be possible bugs within your applications? You may want to review the logs. Reviewing the logs within PTF may not be the simplest solution. So we've given an online interface that looks for, say, all fail scenarios, searches for all fail scenarios, and say I identify a possible bug depending on all the details that are fetched within the grid. I can say I want to go ahead and create a defect for it. So the Defect Manager solution will give you the ability to either pick up an existing defect or update an existing defect or create a new defect altogether. So this is one of the existing defects that resides within the system. It has a complete activity log. It will tell you when was this defect created, how has it transitioned from throughout the life cycle of the defect, whom has it been assigned to. There's also the capability of assigning or sending email notifications to the users to whom it has been assigned. There's also the ability to map the defects to failed executions within PTF. So this is that integration we were speaking about. If you have a third-party Defect Manager solution, it does not integrate completely to PeopleSoft. So Defect Manager has an advantage over such tools because now whatever is happening within your PeopleSoft test framework database is completely reflected within your Defect Manager. So you can map it. You have complete traceability of what failed, how it failed, and what were the possible defects or the bugs within the system. Coming back to the dashboard, there are several reports that we have incorporated based on all the experience we have in terms of several implementations. On an everyday scenario, you can add several such queries that you may need over and above the reports that you're seeing on the dashboard. PTF also comes delivered with certain reports that help you in terms of dealing with customizations or custom bolt-ons or whenever you apply enhancements or patches. We call it the maintenance report. It's a part of PTF. And what the maintenance report does is that it helps you compare your existing application or a compare report with your test repository, and it will highlight all the tests that need modification in case there is a patch that you applied on the system, or in case there's this PUM image that you apply on the system. So this becomes important from the maintenance point of view, and that's something we had highlighted in our slides, that from a maintenance point of view, you may want to keep your tests updated as and when you apply these PUM images. So test maintenance report helps you do that. There are several other reports that are come packaged with PTF that help you do various such things. So talking about, let's get into the details of these tools. The test case generator. Now that we have understood the basic idea of PTF, the test within PTF, and the shell test within PTF, let's talk about how do you create test data. So test data is used, can be created using a test case generator. It's a simple 3-step design. It helps you pick and choose the test that you want, which can be as simple as picking up a purchase order test, or picking up a test, moving on, entering several data values, and then scheduling and executing it. Process sequencer helps you string together several processes. You just need to pick and choose the tests that you want to string together, and you tie them into a single shell test, which then goes and populates your PTF. And we already spoke about the Defect Manager and the test logs. So this was a very high-level overview of some of the capabilities of PTF as well as FastTest. So let's now take a look at what are the options do you have when it comes to implementing the solution.
Thank you, Tanvi, for the demo. This is Arvind again. I'm going to go through a couple of slides, not more than 2 or 3, to talk to you now about how you can implement PTF and FastTest. And if you're interested in getting some best practices and learnings from our other successful implementations, or at the end of this meeting, if you think that you would want to talk to some of our customers to understand what their experience was and how they benefited from this, then feel free to contact us through the web, and we'll be happy to respond to you. So in terms of implementation, there is no cookie-cutter approach for PTF. Now, having said that, because we have implemented so many of these, we have now distilled it down to a core set of tasks that every customer would have to implement at a minimum, and we call that our Jumpstart package. So Jumpstart gives you installation, setup, configuration of PTF and FastTest if you want to buy the FastTest solution from us. And it gives you the ability to set up PTF on one or more desktops or laptops in your office environment so that everybody can start using it. It includes training. It includes a set of best practices and tips and techniques for PTF so that you get it off on the right foot and you set up the right structure within your PeopleSoft infrastructure of instances in multiple environments, how many ever you're maintaining, so that you're off to the right start. And that's really critical. If you don't set this up properly and don't put in the appropriate naming conventions and PTF recording standards and follow best practices, you may end up with a test repository that's not very reusable or may lead to some frustrations when you're recording and storing these tests. So that's important. That's Jumpstart. If you add FastTest onto your PTF solution, then Jumpstart also includes installation and setup of FastTest, including our pre-built libraries, and then some workshops that allow us to come in and compare the pre-built library with your customizations to tell you where the impact is, and also to understand your end-to-end business processes so that we can design and develop a few prototypes for your end-to-end regression scenario. So all of that is usually a week to 2 at the most. The build and test, the customized build, is typically 2 to 4 weeks, and here's what we do in this phase. And you can do this yourselves, or you can have Astute come in and help you with that process. You want to take your core regression scenarios in FSCM or HCM, identify those, and work with us to build the end-to-end regression scenarios. Now, so these will be process sequences and shell tests with the individual tests and test cases needed to support those, with one or more variations depending on how you use the system and how it's configured, including workflow and security steps and so on. So those would be an excellent baseline for you to then build additional tests yourselves or re-engage with Astute down the road when you're ready to build more tests. But in 2 to 4 weeks, typically in a 4-week engagement, we have delivered a few hundred tests and a few tens of shell tests to customers so that they have a very good baseline repository for automated testing. Then comes test execution. So now you've built all of these and you've unit tested these tests and you know they're working, but how do you put it into action for your actual system integration test cycle or a UAT cycle? Oftentimes customers are not prepared for this, and it's not because of a lack of effort, it's just that PTF is new. There are certain things that you have to be aware of when you set up an environment and use it to test the same test scripts across multiple test instances, for example, coordination and planning and gathering all of your test requirements, etc. So we have a process and a packaged offering for that to get you going for one full cycle of testing within your organization. And it can be as short as 2 weeks, it can be as long as 4 weeks with automated testing. And once you do that, now you have a methodology and a process in place for all subsequent test iterations for your PeopleSoft applications. And then there's the ongoing maintenance piece to keep up with changes that PeopleSoft delivers, to keep up with changes that your internal team provides in terms of enhancements and bolt-ons, etc. So how do you do that? How do you incorporate that into PTF and automated testing? So you have to, as I said earlier before the demo, it's important that this is integrated into your ongoing PeopleSoft maintenance lifecycle processes. If you don't do that, then you'll end up with a repository that's not in sync with your current version of configuration and code. We offer maintenance services, so you can use Astute on a fixed fee monthly basis to manage and maintain your tests, even execute your tests for different projects if you'd like us to do that. And for that, you get all of our testing tools and pre-built libraries and the updates that we generate with every PUM image. In terms of how you can procure this, you can purchase the solution. So there's a one-time purchase that gives you a perpetual license. And for that, you get pre-built tests for every application and every module within. You get a consulting service, which is fixed fee, usually 2 to 4 weeks jumpstart, that gives you some custom test scripts. You get the bolt-on tools that you saw today, and then you have installation training and documentation included. If you are not ready, let's say you are already budgeted for this fiscal year and you don't have enough money for another capital expense, then you can think about doing this on a monthly subscription fixed fee model. So you pay as you go and you sign up for a monthly fixed fee basis. You get everything that you saw in the first model, except that you would not purchase the software outright. You'd pay a low fixed monthly fee, and it includes all the same services. So there's 2 easy ways to get started, and we can help you with more details if you have questions for us on a one-on-one basis. So that's all I had for presentation. So let me just pause now and go to Q&A. Let's see if you have any questions in the audience. We have a few to get us started, so thank you for that. Question. So from Dan, you said that with Tools 856, it is going to a PUM approach versus upgrade. Will that be a separate PUM from application PUM, or will they be combined? So the official update for this will come from Oracle Product Development and Product Strategy. What I shared with you was just based on what we've heard at recent conferences and recent partner meetings. And I believe the approach is going to be for it to be combined within a single PUM image, which will have a 9.2 PUM, and that may or may not contain a People Tools update, depending on the frequency of People Tools updates. However, you will have the ability to separate those out, just like you have the ability now to create multiple change packages, and you can do apply those selectively if you want to do that. Question from Kevin: do you sell access to the pre-built library? our PeopleSoft knowledge is quite advanced and would like to jumpstart our library. Absolutely. So you have the ability to just purchase our pre-built library with the automated tests and the automated shell tests. So those are two different varieties that you could get. If you just want the base tests and you want to build your own shell tests, you can do that. If you want to buy our test library and then also some of our automated pre-built shell tests, we also have tests for SOX compliance, for example. So there are many different aspects to our pre-built library. We also have a People Tools regression library for you if you're doing a People Tools patch or an update and you wanted to regression test all of your tools features. So there's many components to that, and you can absolutely just get that, and your team can have a go at it. You can modify it and enhance it for your needs. It is not necessarily tied to everything else we demonstrated today. We strongly believe in the value proposition, and our customers have in turn validated that by buying it and implementing it and using it. However, you have the option to purchase just the pre-built library to jumpstart your PTF initiative. Viewer 111, what is the recommendation of storing all the PTF scripts, production or in development, or create a separate environment just for PTF? So absolutely no in production. You don't want to store test scripts pointing to a production instance just to avoid the accidental running of a test that may create a transaction in your production system. If you have multiple instances of PeopleSoft, like most customers do, and more so if you have multiple pillars of PeopleSoft, like HCM and financials as multiple applications, for example, then we strongly recommend a centralized PeopleSoft test framework test instance that is a central repository and a common repository for all of your test scripts. So now you don't have to maintain copies of test scripts in different instances. They're all in one centralized instance. And you can call the test to run in various test instances from that centralized instance. That makes your test storage and maintenance easier. You're always maintaining it in one central location. And all of your test results are also consolidated and saved in that centralized instance. So that's the recommendation we normally have. Can you give me a sense of pricing for one-time purchase of the HCM vanilla test scripts? Kevin, happy to give you pricing. If I can set up a call and discuss that on one-on-one with you, we can give you a quote within 24 hours. Viewer 111, can you share some details on Testplosion? If you can be a little more specific on the question. Testplosion is a data mining solution. So we use it to automate data prep or test data mining for every test cycle. You saw some examples of how we've pre-built some test data mining scripts or queries for certain tests. You can build that for as many tests as you'd like, or we can build those for you, but we are providing the utility with the underlying engine that you can use. If you have a specific question on that, feel free to post another question. I'll be happy to answer that. I have to drop off for a meeting. Can you please send me the recording for this meeting? All of those who have registered today will get a link to a recording of today's webinar in a day or two once we process that and have that available for you. Does PTF have the ability to perform any performance testing yet? Now, PTF is not intended to be a performance testing tool or a load testing tool at this stage. Looking forward to seeing what's in 8.56, but no indications on that yet. How does automated testing, or how do automated test scripts handle change in data? Example, a situation where the testing box gets regularly refreshed. So this probably goes back to my previous comment. You don't want to overwrite your test environment because it's not just about your test scripts and test data, but also your test logs, your test defects, and all of the historical information that you'll have from previous test cycles, previous projects. You want to maintain that because that can give you a lot of valuable information for future test cycles. So we recommend that you keep your test instance where you store all of your PTF tests out of the refresh cycle. And the test data, you can mine for test data using the tools that we showed you today for every test cycle, and you can mine that data from the instance where you want the test to run. So let's say your centralized testing instance is called PTF Central, and your test instance is called PTF Test 1. Your test will reside in PTF Central, but it will execute using execution profiles on PTF Test 1, using the data that's available in PTF Test 1, but recording the test results back in PTF Central. It's probably better illustrated with a small diagram. I can do that for you if you have further questions on that, and we can take that offline and talk about that in more detail. Okay, I see one or two more questions coming up, so I'll wait for that. In the meantime, so one more here. What do you cover in automated integration testing, and how extensive is your end-to-end testing? So let me talk about how extensive end-to-end testing is, because we were talking about that earlier on. So to give you an example, so let's say you have payroll, time and labor, and self-service. You want to simulate a scenario where you enter 10 or 100 or 200 timesheet entries, approve them according to the approval rules you've set up, push them down from time and labor into payroll for processing, run your payroll processes by one or more groups, however you set it up, at whatever frequencies you've set up in payroll, and then at the end of it, run some reports to validate some of these outcomes. You can do all of that, and we have done those kinds of scenarios. If you wanted to start off with procure to pay, for example, which happens to be a common footprint, at least on the financial side, with most PeopleSoft FSCM customers, you can automate requisitions to purchase orders to invoices to vouchers to payments to GL, and then offshoots of that flow to asset management, project costing, and contracts as well. So we've built those kinds of end-to-end processes where it is one or more shell tests or process sequences with data mined using queries or Testplosion, feeding them automatically, and all of that can run with a single click. It takes a little bit of effort. It does require some contribution from you, the customer, on the design side, and we need to understand your customizations. But once it is done, it is highly reusable, and it's a huge advantage over what it would take you to do that any day over in terms of manual testing. Viewer 111. Okay, what currently tests have hard-coded values. Can data be provided in spreadsheets that the PTF can read from? Absolutely. So we, as part of our implementation, try to avoid hard-coding values in PTF scripts. There may be some situations where they are required, but in most they should not be. And we use different methods so that you don't have to rely on hard-coded values. And we have lots of pre-built library tests that can store global variables with data sets and then pass them on to other tests so that you don't have to maintain individual test cases at the test level. What enhancements have you made since this presentation? So this presentation did show you some of our latest tools, but some of the newer things that we're working on, which is going to be our next release of software. We're going to have scheduling capability, the ability to execute tests online, single or batch mode, and the ability to have more dashboard-style reporting in Fluid and Classic UI. So those are some of the things that we're working on. The Excel data load, sorry to miss that part of the previous question for viewer 111. The Excel data load is a feature that's available. We didn't have a chance to demo that today, but if you would like to see a demo of that, we can schedule an individual call and show you how that works and maybe include others in your organization as well. But if you have a PTF test, you can use Excel to load values and then feed values from the Excel to the test. Now, we don't think that's the most optimal approach because that still puts you back somewhat in manual testing where somebody has to still write a query or fill out an Excel spreadsheet and type in those values. And that also introduces the chance of human errors, right? So you want to avoid that as much as possible. Although Excel upload is a capability, we think the longer-term solution from a maintenance standpoint is better served with query or Testplosion because that looks at your current data all the time and your data in Excel can get stale. Do you have any online page where a non-technical person can modify the data? So that is what Fastest really is all about. We built Fastest because we wanted business users and functional analysts to adopt test automation. It should not just be in the realm of IT and development. So as you can see, the entire theme with Fastest is easy to use, simple screens, a lot of fluid pages. Test data entry can be done through test case generator. It's very intuitive. It looks like one of the many PeopleSoft application screens that you are used to seeing, and we are further enhancing and simplifying that as and when we have fluid versions of those pages. How often do you deliver PUM update tests, and what does it cover? So PUM update tests are delivered with every PUM. We contractually agree to 4 weeks from the GA date of a PUM image that's the time when we'll have an updated test library available that would include any new features or enhanced features in our test library with pre-recorded tests. That is available to those customers who sign up for our annual maintenance. And in addition to that, whenever there's a People Tools update or upgrade, we further enhance our software and regression test it for the new version of People Tools and deliver any updated test scripts that may be needed. So as a customer, you may consume that once a year or twice a year, depending on your selective adoption strategy, but we update our software and our pre-built tests with every PUM image. And we do that for FSCM, HCM, and we're starting to do that for Campus Solutions now as well. For getting the coverage reports for PTF, do we need any component of performance monitoring enabled? I'm assuming this relates to People Tools and the Performance Monitor. You don't need performance monitoring enabled for coverage reports for PTF. Some other things that we get from our previous webinars, the PTF can be used to test fluid. It can be used to test queries, your batch reports, your regularly used, your batch processes, your regularly used reports, whether you run them online or batch. And it completely incorporates security, workflow, and all of those features. So think of PTF as anything that you do in PeopleSoft online through the browser-based application, you can absolutely test that with PTF. What is the advantage of using automation of queries? So when we talk about using queries for test automation, it is primarily in the context of data mining. So query is a great tool to dynamically go in and fetch data values and feed that to your test. So you eliminate the manual entry of test values. You have to write the query so that it is intelligent enough to look at open periods, current open terms or courses available for enrollment, and things like that, or employee populations by a particular department or location, or who meet a certain criteria, part-time, contingent, full-time, requisition by type of supplier. So you can write lots of different queries and make it specific to your tests and go from there. But the idea is that you build that once and you continue to tweak the query if your application configuration or code changes, but then you don't have to do manual entry of test data into all of your tests. Now, apart from that, so let's say you are doing an upgrade and you just wanted to quickly test all of your queries that were retrofitted to make sure, and most of you have thousands and thousands of queries in your PeopleSoft application. Now, let's say you take a small percentage of those and you want to move forward with that. Then once you have retrofitted those queries, you want to run all of them in a set as opposed to having somebody sit at a terminal and open one query at a time and run it. You can easily package all of them into a PTF test and run all of them in one shot, and that can be run as many times as you would like. And you can also compare and contrast the run times between executions of queries, between the first and the second iteration, for example, so you will know if there was a performance change or a performance impact. So that's one way to identify the performance impact. It's not true performance testing, but it does capture runtime values, start and end times, and the difference between those will give you the time it took to run that query or process. And you can use the same thing for a batch job as well. Question, can I have a monthly subscription for just 6 months, or do I have a minimum subscription period? Right now, we are offering a monthly subscription model with a minimum subscription of 1 year, but happy to take that offline and talk to you about your need for 6 months. I'm sure we can work something out. Manually compare the runtime. Viewer 88. So for queries. So if your question is how you could compare the runtimes, PTF just logs the start and end time for all tests. plain and simple. So you run a query, it'll tell you when it started and when it completed. It may include a few milliseconds or more for the time it requires to set up the query and send it to execute. But in general, it's a good representative number instead of you having to manually measure it. So it will record the start and end time for a query if the query is part of a test. And let's say that's a performance hog and it runs for 20 minutes. And you tune it and you want to see how it compared to the previous run. You can run the same query again and check the start and end times, and you'll know if it made a difference. And the fact that you're doing it through PTF gives you a trace or a log of every iteration of that query, so you have a performance history in essence. So hopefully that answered all of your questions, folks. A couple of other things that I wanted to share with some recent successes. For those of you who are healthcare customers in PeopleSoft and are attending HIUG, we'll be at HIUG 2016 in San Antonio next week, booth number 214. Please feel free to stop by and ask us more questions about this. If those of you who missed our last webinar, which was on May 20th, the topic was deploying PeopleSoft on cloud. We are working very closely with Oracle to help customers move from on-prem to Oracle Public Cloud. And a live recording of that webinar is available on our YouTube channel. So go to YouTube and search for Astute Business Solutions and look at our May 20th, 2016 webinar recording. If you have any questions on that, feel free to contact us. There's a lot of information on our website about FastTest and PTF. There will be a recording of this webinar as well. We just launched a new support site for our FastTest products. All of our customers who sign up for FastTest and use our product will also have a support site that will include a compiled list of all the resolutions for PTF and FastTest, and also some topics on test automation in general. I wanted to mention that is only for customers, yes, because it comes as part of the maintenance that they pay for. They get support. And that's also a way for them to log service requests for us if there's a bug or any issue that they have with the software that they buy from Astute. Also wanted to mention that we are at EC Rug, the Eastern Canadian Rug in Toronto. That is the third week of June, on June 21st. So for those of you who are customers from Canada who have tried to join in today or are listening in, we'll be there. So looking forward to meeting you there. And also for Latin America in August. So we're going to be at the Alliance Conference in Latin America on August 22nd. So those are the updates from our website, from our side, and there's a lot more information on our website that you can look at. Go to beastute.com or fasttest.beastute.com, and feel free to poke around there and contact us from there if you have any questions. For those of you who were interested in subscription information or pricing models for FastTest and our PTF services, we'll reach out to you one-on-one. If you signed in without your first and last name, unfortunately, I won't be able to contact you directly. You will have to contact us. Send an email to info@beastute.com, and we'll be happy to respond to you, set up a meeting, and discuss pricing in detail. I know some of you had difficulty joining the webinar today. Partly it's because I think in some corporate environments, join.me is blocked through your firewall. And JoinMe is our platform that allows us to invite hundreds of people onto a single webinar. For the most part, it is widely accepted. So apologies if you were not able to log in because of firewall issues or other login issues. If you'd like us to schedule a one-on-one demo for your organization, again, please contact us at info@beastute. Some of you have already asked for that, so we'll be in touch with you, and we'll take it from there. Thank you again for your time and participation. Hope you enjoyed the webinar and found it interesting and helpful. We're happy to chat with you as you have more questions for us. But we'll end the webinar now, and have a wonderful day, everybody. Thank you. Bye.